Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Michael and you're watching Reading for Living, the show on YouTube for future millionaires and entrepreneurs. Most successful people in the world have at least one thing in common, and that is that they read a lot of books. If you want to read more books but don't have the time, at least subscribe to this channel and hit that notifications bell, because I'll bring you the core information and idea from the books that can change your life for the better. So the book of this week is a thought-provoking one. The Lessons of History by Will and Ariel Durant. If you don't know who they are, well, I'll tell you. They were a couple and were both historians, and they are best known for their 11 volumes on the story of civilization, who were published between 1935 and 1975. Today, I'll tell you the 6 lessons of the book that can make you more aware of where we come from. Lesson number 1. We don't really know what happened in history. What we know about past events and civilizations are events recorded by the historians of that time. The historians would put an accent on extraordinary events and not on the mundane ones, which also means that the written history might be different than the actual lived history. There are also examples of biased historians, and the history that we learn might be influenced by our own patriotism or religiousness, which also means that most history is guessing and the rest is prejudice. Number 2. Our human nature has not evolved. People behave the same throughout history, and the evolution that we might have has been more social than biological. This means that we change political systems and technologies, but not our own instincts that help us meet or avoid the opportunities or challenges that life might offer us. The poor have the same instincts as the rich, but only with fewer resources to implement their desires. Nothing is clearer in history than the adoption by the successful rebels of the methods that they used to criticize on the ruling class that they just dethroned. Lesson number 3. Biology is everywhere in our written history. There are 3 lessons of history that are taught by our biology. The first is that life is competition. Humans come from time when they had to fight, chase and kill in order to survive. And this competition is the same to this day, although we have different responses to the same old problems of survival. And although cooperation is real, this happens because by cooperating, the group or the nation becomes stronger and can compete better with other groups or nations. The second lesson of biology is that life is selection. In our competition for food, mates and power, some succeed and some fail. People are not really born equal, because everybody has different intellect, different physical abilities and different psychology. And another thing is that the freer people are, the bigger these inequalities get. And the third lesson is that life needs to breed. Nature puts an accent on quantity before it can select quality. Lesson number 4. Probably every vice that we have now was once a virtue. Our moral codes were very variable in history, but also very necessary. When we needed to survive on scarce resources, a man would need to take more risks in order to provide food. This meant that the death rate between men and women was higher. This means that a man would need to take more women to impregnate, but also had to fight and kill if necessary, and eat to the full capacity of his stomach because he didn't know when he would find another meal. This means that sexual readiness, brutality and greed were necessary in order to survive. When agriculture came around, these behaviors were no longer so necessary in order to survive, because you needed to live at a farm and raise your own family. Lesson number 5. You can look at history through the economic lens. If the ancient Greeks didn't seek control of the Dardanelles, they wouldn't have launched 1,000 ships and we wouldn't have known about Agamemnon, Achilles and Hector. If the middle classes didn't need the legislative freedom to do their economic trade, then probably the French Revolution wouldn't have happened. If the West didn't need to capture trade routes to the East, probably the Crusades wouldn't have taken place. And because of the failure of the Crusades, America wouldn't have been discovered. And lesson number 6, history repeats itself, but only in the outline and the large. Some new states might appear and some others might disappear. New discoveries might agitate the intellectual currents, and the new generations might rebel against the old. But also, the complexity of the world that we are currently living in might also mean that the future might not repeat the past. One thing is clear, that civilizations grow and decay. Growth is possible by passing the challenges that a civilization is faced throughout the time. And decay happens when a civilization fails to pass these challenges. We need to remember that a civilization never dies, but it remains in the memory of its race through the ruins, works of art, or products of intellect. The creations of a civilization might be studied by more people in this day than they were when the civilization existed. The memory gets passed down from generation to generation through education. And although today in many civilized cities the lower classes of people might be not so different than the barbarians that used to live, in this day millions of people have reached the moral and mental levels that we rarely can find in primitive man. Guys, these were the 6 lessons that I found interesting from the book The Lessons of History by Will and Ariel Durant. If you want to read more about this book, be sure to check my website ReadingForLiving.com, where I've written a lengthy summary on the subject. If you want to read the book yourselves, I left some links in the description below with the places where you can find it. That was all for today, and see you next time.